Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep into the world of multi-level marketing. Those businesses, with the catchy slogans and the promises of financial freedom, you've definitely seen them online.
Absolutely.
But we're going beyond those social media pitches, you and I. We're digging into the history, the psychology, the cultural impact of MLMs.
Right.
Get ready for some surprises along the way, because we're about to unpack a world that's a lot bigger than it appears.
It's true. MLMs might seem like a modern phenomenon with those perfectly filtered Instagram posts. But their roots, they run surprisingly deep, intertwined with American culture and consumerism in ways you might not expect.
So where do we even start with a topic like this? Where does this tangled web of entrepreneurship and, let's be honest, sometimes questionable practices even begin?
Believe it or not, a familiar name like Avon is a good starting point.
Okay.
It might not scream MLM to everyone, but it embodies the evolution of this business model.
Avon,
Yeah.
like the makeup my grandmother always had, has been around that long?
Way back to 1892.
Wow.
It started as the California Perfume Company. The founder, David McConnell, was actually a book salesman, but he realized women weren't finding the same success selling door-to-door, so he pivoted, and perfume seemed like a natural fit.
That's quite a jump from books to perfume, but I guess if you're already going door to door?
Exactly. But his real stroke of genius was realizing that women selling directly to other women, building that trust within communities, that was the game changer.
Makes sense, especially back then. You'd buy from someone you knew.
That social connection became his currency. This direct sales model, though not an MLM yet, laid the groundwork for everything that followed.
Okay.
But to understand the shift from direct sales to the multi-level structure, we need to fast forward a bit and talk Tupperware parties.
Okay. Now, Tupperware parties, I've seen those. My aunt used to host them.
It's a classic for a reason. Brownie Wise joined Tupperware in 1949, and she was a marketing visionary. She created this whole party plan model, making it a social event, not just a sales pitch.
So it was about more than just the product. It was about the experience.
Exactly. Wise tapped into the power of community and a fun, engaging atmosphere. And let's be honest, it worked. Many MLMs today still rely heavily on this party plan model. But to trace the whole vitamins and supplements angle, we need to introduce a character you might not expect, Carl Runberg.
All right. Let's hear about this Renberg fellow. What's his story?
Well, he was a bit of a serial entrepreneur, always starting and stopping ventures.
Yeah.
In the 1920s, while living in China, he became fascinated by the link between diet and health. This fascination led him to create Nutrilite, one of the very first multivitamin companies in 1936.
So he was ahead of the curve with the whole vitamin craze. People have always been looking for that magic health solution.
It's a tale as old as time. But being ahead of the curve got Nutrilite in hot water with the FDA.
Uh-oh.
This led to a landmark legal battle, the Nutrilite Consent Decree of 1951, which still shapes how supplements are marketed even today.
Oh, wow. So what happened? What changed?
Essentially, the decree said, unless you could prove your product treated or cured a specific ailment through rigorous scientific testing, no such claims allowed. You've probably noticed supplement ads today are very careful with their language.
That's right. They always use those vague phrases like supports immune health instead of saying prevents colds.
Exactly. It's that decree's lasting impact. It forced companies to use what are called structure function claims, suggesting a benefit without promising a cure. And believe me, navigating this legal gray area is a dance many MLMs still know how to do.
This is fascinating. So we've got Avon setting the stage with direct sales, Tupperware bringing in the party plan, and Nutrilite showing us the power and the legal pitfalls of health and wellness claims. Where do we go from here?
Well, this is where two young entrepreneurs named Jay Van Andel and Rich DeVos enter the picture. Their partnership began after World War II, and they were not afraid to try anything. Aviation, drive-in restaurants, even a disastrous attempt to sail to South America. Talk about adventurous spirits.
That's quite a range. Okay, so they were clearly ambitious. How does this tie back to vitamins and the world of MLMs?
They stumbled upon Nutrilite and started selling it, but here's the twist. They weren't completely satisfied with the product.
Okay.
So in classic entrepreneurial fashion, they decided to create their own company in 1959, Amway.
Amway. Now that's a name synonymous with MLMs. Everyone's heard of Amway.
And for good reason, Amway's story is crucial to understanding how MLMs really took off. This wasn't just about selling soap and cleaning products. They built an entire brand philosophy around entrepreneurship, financial freedom, personal responsibility, all with a very deliberate tie to American conservatism and the idea of free enterprise.
So it was about tapping into something bigger than just, hey, buy our soap. It was an idea, a lifestyle they were selling.
You hit the nail on the head. This ideology, packaged with that promise of financial success, it was alluring. But it also made Amway incredibly controversial.
Controversial how? Okay, this is where I need all the details.
Yeah. Well, in the 1970s, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, came knocking. They were investigating Amway as a potential illegal pyramid scheme. This investigation culminated in a landmark 1979 ruling.
So what did the FTC decide? Was Amway a pyramid scheme or not?
This is where it gets interesting. While the FTC did find some of Amway's business practices to be deceptive, they stopped short of shutting them down completely. Instead, they established what became known as the Amway Rules.
Okay, the Amway rules. What are we talking about here?
Essentially, these rules created specific criteria that MLMs had to follow in order to operate legally.
Right.
Things like requiring a demonstrable focus on retail sales, not just recruitment, and requiring proof that products were being sold to actual customers outside of the network. It was an attempt to draw a clearer line in the sand.
So they were trying to prevent those classic pyramid schemes disguised as legitimate businesses. Sounds like a good thing, right?
On the surface, absolutely. But, and this is a big but, those well-intentioned rules unintentionally legitimized the MLM model as a whole, making it much harder to prosecute potentially harmful schemes in the years that followed.
How so? I'm not sure I follow.
Think of it this way. By laying out these specific rules, the FTC inadvertently created a legal blueprint that MLMs could now follow.
Oh, I see.
Companies could point to the Amway rules and say, see, we're operating legally, just like Amway. It created this gray area that's been exploited ever since.
Wow, so this one case had a ripple effect.
And it doesn't stop there. To make things even more complicated, Van Andel and Debos, they were politically active, especially within the Republican Party. This political clout only further solidified Amway's place in American culture and their ability to navigate legal challenges.
It's amazing how one company can have such a significant and complicated legacy. They really did set the stage for the entire MLM industry, for better or for worse.
They did. But I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, the darker side of MLMs. It's not all Tupperware parties and positive thinking. We need to talk about the potential for exploitation and the very real harm these business models can inflict.
You're right. And for that, we're going to need to hear some real stories. Stories like Julie's, who got involved with Pure Romance, a company selling lingerie and adult toys.
Julie's story, unfortunately, is not unique. She perfectly illustrates the potential pitfalls of this world.
All right, well, let's hear it. What happened to Julie?
Patrick, well, he wasn't content with just selling cosmetics.
Right.
He was selling a vision, a path to self-improvement, and of course, wealth, often blurring the lines between a business opportunity and some kind of personal development movement.
Yeah.
He even created something called the Leadership Dynamics Institute, LDI for short, and the techniques they used in their seminars were, well, let's just say controversial.
Controversial how? What was going on at these seminars?
One example that really stands out and really illustrates how far things went is something called the pit. It was this grueling, psychologically manipulative exercise they used at LDI seminars.
Oh, wow.
We're talking intense verbal abuse, physical confrontations, even mock burials.
What?
All designed, they claimed, to break down inhibitions and unleash your potential.
Hold on, mock burials. This sounds more like a cult initiation than a business seminar.
It was extreme, and eventually legal trouble did catch up with Patrick, multiple lawsuits for fraud and deceptive business practices. But he died in a plane crash before facing any real consequences.
Wow, what a story. It's a reminder that these MLM stories, they aren't always about someone trying to sell you overpriced candles. It can get much darker than that.
Absolutely. And Patrick isn't an isolated case. Another figure who pushed those boundaries was Glenn Turner, the man behind Costco Interplanetary Cosmetics and those Dare to Be Great motivational tapes.
Okay. I've never even heard of that one.
Turner was all about the spectacle, flashy cars, extravagant claims of wealth, all part of his sales pitch. But for most of his recruits, that lifestyle was unsustainable, built on empty promises.
Right.
He, too, ended up facing legal trouble for operating a pyramid scheme.
So we're seeing a pattern here. These larger-than-life personalities, they draw people in with the promise of quick riches and a glamorous lifestyle. But the reality for most people is much different. It makes you wonder, why do MLMs persist? With all these legal challenges, the ethical concerns, why are they still so prevalent today? They're everywhere online.
You've hit on a crucial question, and the answer is more complex than you might think. You see, MLMs are surprisingly adaptable. They found ways to evolve with the times, and to understand their enduring appeal, we need to look beyond the surface into the psychology of it all.
Okay, the psychology of MLMs, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
What is it about these business models that draws people in, even when the odds of success seem so stacked against them?
Well, for one, never underestimate the allure of entrepreneurship. That dream of being your own boss, setting your own hours, escaping the 9-to-5 grind, it's powerful. And MLMs, they're masters at tapping into that desire, packaging themselves as a path to empowerment and financial freedom.
I get that. I mean, who hasn't daydreamed about being their own boss?
Nah.
But we both know it's rarely that simple.
Exactly. The reality is running any business is tough, and most MLM participants, they don't achieve the financial success they're promised. In fact, many end up losing money, spending more on products and recruitment materials than they ever make in sales.
So it's a classic bait and switch. They reel you in with this dream of entrepreneurship, but the reality is much harsher.
It can be, but it's not just about the allure of easy money. There's another more subtle psychological factor at play here, the power of positive thinking.
Okay, I hear that phrase thrown around a lot, but how does it relate to MLMs specifically?
MLMs often cultivate a culture of relentless optimism. You'll hear a lot about personal responsibility, the power of positive thinking, the idea that anyone can achieve success if they just have the right mindset.
So it's about selling a belief system as much as a product.
Precisely. It's about creating an environment where those setbacks, those financial struggles, they're seen as personal failings, a lack of belief, rather than flaws in the system itself.
That's a really good point. And that kind of thinking, it can keep people trapped in a cycle that isn't working for them.
It can. And this is where the financial vulnerability of many MLM participants comes into play. They often target those who are already struggling financially, stay-at-home parents, people facing unemployment, those desperate for a way to make ends meet.
It's predatory, preying on people when they're at their most vulnerable.
It is. Those promises of financial freedom and flexibility, they're even more tempting when you're in a difficult situation. But we can't ignore the role technology plays in all of this. Social media has become a breeding ground for MLM recruitment.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere you look online these days.
It's been a game changer for MLMs. They can bypass traditional advertising and use influencers, testimonials, those perfectly curated Instagram feeds to create this sense of community and aspiration.
It's selling a lifestyle, not just a product. And when you see people, people you trust promoting these businesses, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement.
Exactly. And that sense of community, that social pressure, it's amplified online. There's that fear of missing out, the pressure to be part of the in crowd.
It's fascinating, but also kind of disturbing when you think about how these tactics are being used. Do any modern MLMs come to mind when you think about these trends, these strategies?
One prominent example is Young Living essential oils.
Okay.
It's a perfect illustration of how these factors we've been discussing, the allure of entrepreneurship, the power of belief, and yes, the exploitation of financial vulnerability can converge to create a multi-million-dollar empire.
Essential oils, yeah. They're everywhere these days. Everyone I know is obsessed with them. What's the story there?
Young Living was founded by Gary Young in the 1990s. He tapped into a growing interest in alternative medicine and wellness, and he marketed his essential oils as natural, holistic remedies, cure-alls for practically anything you could imagine.
But are essential oils really that effective? I mean, I love lavender oil for relaxation, but I'm not sure it's going to cure the common cold.
You've hit on a critical point. Despite Young's claims about the healing powers of essential oils, there's actually very little scientific evidence to back them up. In fact, he even faced legal trouble for practicing medicine without a license and making unsubstantiated medical claims.
Wow. So it was more about the marketing, the belief systems surrounding the product, than the product itself.
To a large extent, yes. But here's the thing. Despite those controversies, Young Living thrived. They created this massive network of distributors, many of whom genuinely believed in the efficacy of their products and were eager to share them with their social networks.
It's the classic MLM playbook. Build a network of passionate believers who become both customers and salespeople.
Exactly. And Young Living leveraged social media masterfully to amplify that message and reach an even wider audience. It's the same story, just with a new product and a digital twist.
So, despite the lack of scientific backing, Young Living's success came from tapping into those same psychological factors we were discussing. That desire for entrepreneurship, the appeal of a positive community, and the vulnerability of people seeking alternative solutions.
Precisely. They understood that selling a product is often about selling a story, a belief system, an aspiration.
It's a reminder that we need to be savvy consumers, to look beyond those glossy marketing campaigns and do our own research.
I couldn't agree more. And on that note, I think it's time we shift gears and delve into what we can actually do about all of this. How can we protect ourselves and others from falling prey to those potentially harmful business models? What can we learn from these stories, from Avon to Young Living and everything in between?
That's what I want to know. I'm ready to dive into solutions. So knowing all of this, how do we protect ourselves? Where do we even begin?
That feeling of where do we even begin is exactly what makes these schemes so pervasive. But a good place to start is awareness. Understanding the MLM business model, recognizing the red flags, it's like having a BS detector with extra strong batteries.
Okay, so walk me through this. What are the telltale signs, the red flags that should make someone hit pause?
One of the biggest, a huge emphasis on recruitment over actual product sales. If it feels like they're more invested in you building a downline than in customers actually using the product, that's a red flag.
So if someone's pushing you to join their team or their squad, more than they're talking about the product itself, that's a red flag.
Big time. Another one, those exaggerated income claims.
Right.
If a company is promising you'll be making 6 figures in 6 months by selling essential oils or leggings online, proceed with extreme caution.
It's like those weight loss ads, right? Showing those dramatic before and after pictures, but not mentioning the crazy diets or hours of exercise it took to get there.
Exactly. MLMs often use those same tactics, highlighting the financial success of a tiny percentage at the top while downplaying the struggles of the majority. Do your research. Look for independent reviews, news articles, anything to get a balanced perspective.
So be skeptical of the hype, look beyond the flashy marketing, and dig a little deeper before jumping in. Good advice for any big decision, really. But what about the bigger picture here? You mentioned something earlier about deregulation, how it's actually creating an environment where MLMs are thriving. What can we do about that?
You're right. It's not just about individual awareness. We need systemic change.
Okay.
The weakening of consumer protection laws in recent decades, this trend towards deregulation, it's made it much harder to hold MLMs accountable.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
So what can we do? How can everyday people make a difference?
It starts with using your voice. Contact your elected officials. Let them know that stronger consumer protections matter to you. Support organizations working to expose MLM abuses. Knowledge is power, and the more we talk about these issues, the harder it becomes to ignore them.
So it's about changing the conversation, making it clear that we're not okay with businesses built on exploitation, even if they come wrapped in a shiny package.
Exactly, and never underestimate the power of your own consumer choices. Every time you choose to spend your money with ethical, transparent companies, you're sending a message.
That's a powerful way to think about it. It's not just about avoiding MLMs, it's about supporting businesses that align with your values.
Exactly. This whole deep dive, it's not about telling people what to do, it's about giving them the information they need to make informed choices.
It's about empowering people to ask critical questions, to see through the hype, and to demand better from the businesses they support.
I like that, demanding better. Because we deserve better. And together, we can create a marketplace where ethical businesses thrive and exploitative schemes, well, they get left behind.
I love that energy. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've gone from vintage Avon ladies to essential oils empires, unpacking history, psychology, and the power of critical thinking along the way.
It's been a wild ride. And we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, so many angles to consider.
Which is why we want to hear from you. What resonated with you today? Have you had any experiences with MLMs, good or bad? Share your thoughts on our socials, join the conversation.
Because being informed is the first step, but it's the conversations we have, the actions we take that can truly make a difference.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and until next time, stay curious.